roll call. We've got myself, and Sarah, Daryl, and Chris. I think it's just Ann that we're missing at this point, right?
Correct. And she should be here in about 5 minutes at the latest.
So I think we can conduct business. The first order of business is to elect a chairperson. And I would like to nominate Sarah Chase for that position.
Second.
Great, Chris. All in favor? All right, Sarah, you're the woman.
Okay. Woohoo. With that in mind, prior to the meeting, I did send around a couple of documents or a few documents for you. One was just sort of a little bit on definitions of cannabis versus hemp, so we sort of know what we're starting from. Yeah. And I think a little bit of a cautionary tale that, even at the state and the federal level, there is still some confusion about all the terminology and a little bit about what all of this means. My recommendation for us would, because we're in the state of Connecticut, to go by the terminology used specifically by the state.
Yep.
And as we progress here, I would be happy to bring in maybe one of the cannabis commissioners from the state of Connecticut to sort of help guide us a little bit. I think would be wise for us, because there are considerations both from the perspective of the agricultural and farming community when we talk about hemp, from the perspective of recreational users, and from the perspective of medical cannabis users. So you sort of have three competing interests there at the same time. And then we all have to be aware that at the federal level, that cannabis has not been descheduled yet. So it's still a Schedule I drug. So at the federal level, it is still federally illegal. But then the state has made medical and recreational use available to the public for anyone under or over the age of 18.
So Sarah, I've always known that and I've taken that in. So how does that work? If it's not legal in the United States, how does that work?
Well, the federal law always trumps state, but in this case, the states have decided that, particularly on the portion of criminal justice reform, that it has not made sense to prosecute at this stage. So they are sort of looking in other directions. The states also understand that this is a way of bringing in tax dollars, significant amount of tax dollars, and that there is a lot of good that can be achieved with this, both on the criminal justice reform side. Also, the money that goes into this can go into social welfare programs. They can go into social equity programs. They can go into education. The difficulty now is just where the police departments land on this, between the police, the DEA, and the DOJ. So while the states are able to sort of mitigate any kind of criminal activity around this, the DEA at any time could still come in and make a prosecution. You also see that a lot of the credit card companies and the banks are still adverse to working in the cannabis field.
Sure, that's
so
right.
most transactions regarding anything involving the psychoactive component, which is THC, is still done in cash. So but something like CBD, which is extracted, or any of the other cannabinoids that are non-psychoactive, they are federally legal at this stage under the USDA Farm Bill of 2013. So
could you bring that person in? That would be.
Yeah. And the confusion around this really does lie around the USDA Farm Bill, which is in the process of being rewritten at this stage. And there's a series of considerations around that at this stage. But essentially, hemp and cannabis are the same thing. It's just a terminology that they use to distinguish between the two. And hemp is anything that's 0.03% or less THC. So, and THC is the only part of the plant that contains the psychoactive component that actually gets you high. So all of the other cannabinoids, including CBD, are non-psychoactive. And there are something like 138 cannabinoids that are found within the cannabis plant. And they are found in other plants too. It's not just cannabis. You have as many in your rhododendrons.
Yep.
The I think consideration for us to remember is that THC can still be extracted from hemp. So sometimes you get a crop that yields an amount that's over the 0.03% limit, which is still an arbitrary number to begin with. There's really no reason,
Right.
and you can also do an extraction with I think it's called decarboxylation. It's where you heat up the plant, and you can still turn hemp basically into, and I'm going to get this wrong, it's either delta 8 or delta 9, which is a psychoactive component too of THC.
Well, hemp is used for a lot of products.
Yeah, hemp in itself has historically been used too. So, in if you lived in Connecticut in like 16 up until the 1900s, in some cases it was illegal not to grow hemp. And you had to keep a store in your backyard. During World War II, hemp was used again. It's an antimicrobial cloth. So when you make it into a product, the Chinese army, for example, uses all hemp in their clothing products because it has the antimicrobial property to it. So it in itself is a very diverse plant. You can do a lot with it, and you can make hempcrete out of it. So the consideration with it, however, is that you have to sort of mass produce hemp in order to make it a viable commodity or viable product, which is a consideration for us as a commission to consider is, if we're going to talk about it as an agricultural product, what's the minimum acreage that we would think about in terms of hemp production? So is it like 1,000 acres that we start at to consider this a viable hemp farm? And then we want to consider whether or not somebody is, and I have to check the regulations because I'm not exactly sure for Connecticut what it is, whether or not you can grow your own when it comes to cannabis and things too. You can't sell it, but I know I'm pretty sure you can grow it at this stage.
Mhm.
And we have to think about.
How could you restrict someone from growing less than 1,000 acres if that's what we deemed a viable commercial operation? I mean, it's legal, so people could grow hemp in any amount that they wanted, correct?
Much.
Yeah, but I mean, to consider it like I mean, we could put a restriction on. I think I don't know. This is something we have to look into. I think maybe to back us up for a second here too is sending out a survey to the townspeople though too, before we even begin to kind of regulate on this, to find out what people in town feel about this too. Because we're going to have, I think, a number of diverse opinions when it comes to whether this is a recreational product, whether it's a medical product, whether it's an agricultural product. What do we do about grow your own situations? Is it a greenhouse? Is it there are a lot of points to this that we're going to have to walk ourselves through. So it on the surface seems like a sort of cut and dry scenario, and on the back end it gets more complicated.
Well, I do know that if you were growing it for the THC properties for yourself, it has to be grown indoors inside an enclosed area. It can't be grown outdoors. So if someone's doing it for themselves, growing it privately for themselves, it has to be grown inside. Otherwise, they can be arrested for it. Because anyone has access to it outside. I don't know about large scale crops for THC. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah,
Sure they're growing those inside too, but There are
we,
places right over in New York State over here where there's massive fields, like in Copake Lake. It's probably last time I was over there last year, and there was maybe 500 acres, not too far off the road, which I thought was pretty crazy.
in the documents that I sent earlier, there are a few areas where we could look at for best practices for towns in New England, not just Connecticut specifically, but like Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Maine, other states that have regulated both hemp and cannabis. So I would sort of suggest that we start there once we understand what the general perspective of the town is. And kind of go from there, along with integrating that with what the state of Connecticut requires us to do.
Who distilled those best practices for Kent? That's a great document. That was super helpful.
Yeah, I did. I went through and kind of did a search for us.
Really
Yeah.
appreciated that.
And we can kind of drill down to once we have more input from our fellow citizens here about what direction we should go in.
So going back to the 1,000-acre point that you were making before, and I was just rolling through my head real quick, and I was trying to think of anywhere in Kent that has 1,000 acres that would be
Well,
planted.
Yeah, and Chris, I mentioned this for kind of another reason too, is that with hemp, to make it like a viable business at this stage too, it's still a very difficult business to enter into. So in order to be profitable, I mean, let's look at what an investment would have to go into it. They would have to have a very sizable acreage to actually have a viable product. And then the other consideration is that there are no pieces of agricultural equipment that are currently designed to cultivate hemp. So they have to be kind of jerry-rigged together, which is another considerable investment. So in some ways, I think we do, I know I'm going to go on the public record of saying this, but we do kind of want to disincentivize somebody who's not going to be fully invested in putting that kind of resources into putting a hemp farm here, because it's going to require, I think that a lot of people get into this business thinking that's an easy cash cow, and it is absolutely not.
No, it's not. Not for the hemp part of it anyway.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons why, as a planning and zoning commission, we kind of want to help people help themselves. In that, if you really have to have quite a bit of resources put together in order to make it a viable product. And then if they're doing cannabis related, there is, for the most part, that is indoor grows. And they would have to have a very sizable piece of acreage just to do that, plus the security that goes into it and everything else that's required at this stage. So I think that's why we want to think about that in terms of what it brings to the town.
I can't even think of any farms, any old farms
no.
that have.
It would be very hard to equip something around here. And my husband is from Delvin, Illinois, which is where Revolution opened their first grow, and they have, and that's, granted, that's Illinois. It's all farmland too. It's flat, easy to cultivate farmland, and it doesn't go like this, and it doesn't have rock. And that that has somewhat revitalized their town a little bit, but at the same time, it's all indoors, and cannabis requires a considerable amount of energy and water. It is not a sustainable plant to grow. Hemp outside is, but cannabis indoors requires just a lot of energy to keep it going, and a lot of water.
So Sarah, I think this is terrific. I think the purpose of this meeting was kind of to set up, to organize, present some information, but certainly one topic, and we all have the information. I think we need to digest it. I certainly do. Is to talk about what we're going to do with the canvassing that you came up with, and I think that form was a great start.
Yeah, and Anne, I realized I didn't get a chance to add it in, but you did have a question that you wanted added to it, which I think everyone was sort of in agreement to. And can you just remind me of what it was?
You're on mute. And
Still
And
unmute.
can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay,
There you go.
sorry. Yes, it was. How many people would, if there were a retail uh operation in town, how many people would use it?
Okay, let's definitely add that question to it. It's an important one. Ty,
We wanna-
I don't know if you've got this as a, do you want me to redo that and send it to you for the public drive?
Sure, if you'd like to, yeah. I mean, I don't know where you're going with it after this point. Do you want to start distributing or you want to take a vote on it at some point?
I'm happy to add that to it, and then if you want to vote on it now, we could authorize the survey. And then there's a question I would have, I think maybe for you, Ty, is do we have does the town have a budget for it? Because it would be a cost to the town to do the survey in terms of printing out some documents and just doing the distribution.
Well, I mean, the land use office has those facilities, so I think that we can, we have a budget that, is good for that. And then also I this week was able to get the password for the Survey Monkey account that the town has. So that might be a good way not to use a lot of, paper and all that kind of stuff to send it out as well. It's up to you how you want to do it.
so,
Does it,
I think we have to have the commission approve the go-ahead of this. We can present it at the next regular meeting
Yep.
as our recommendation, right? But I think the zoning commission probably needs to vote on this, right?
I did put, under committee reports, this meeting on the agenda for next week. So, these meetings align kind of nicely where, it'll just be a couple days before you can kind of review everything that you discussed with
Right.
the group next week.
Okay, so if I don't know, I can make a motion then to recommend that we send the survey and the distribution plan to the full commission at the next full meeting next Thursday.
I'll second that.
I just had one question, and I'm sure we'll add more questions, but there was mention of both, cannabis products and hemp. I'd be interested in knowing what the public's baseline knowledge is between the two. Did we want to insert a question as to whether people knew of the distinctions between the two? I'm foreseeing the town probably being split in terms of how they feel about hemp once they're knowledgeable about it versus cannabis products. So I'd want to verify that they actually know what they're deciding between.
I will think about that and add a question similar to it about what is your current knowledge of hemp and well, let's see how you want to phrase that. How knowledgeable? Yeah, go
Or
ahead.
even CBD products versus THC products. I mean, I think there's going to have to be some public education from our part as we go through this process. So it would just be good to know how much education we need to be dispensing as we go along, or whether people have enough knowledge to actually make decisions that are informed.
Wanted to make one of the first questions then. Are you aware of the differences between hemp and cannabis and THC and CBD?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then maybe we can, I'm in interest of keeping the survey short so that
Yeah.
people will do it. So that's two more questions. We could ask, I think, would you be open to an educational forum about this in the town or something along those lines? And then maybe maybe we'll get that in the comments. That might be a step too far. Again, I want it short enough that people will
Right.
take the time to do it.
Sarah, I think that's the question about, do you know the difference between hemp and cannabis, and is kind of subjective. I mean, somebody may think they know the difference, but they may not.
Maybe we do a how familiar are you with the differences, and then do a rating scale, and then we can get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 being very familiar, 1 being no knowledge, and that will inform us then about how much education we need to provide. Does that help?
Yeah, very helpful.
Okay. I'll amend that, and along with your other question too, Anne, about retail operations. Ty, I'll send that to you after this meeting when I'm done making the things, and if you want to distribute to everybody, that'd be awesome.
Is it important to note on the survey that in order to enter a retail operation, you have to be 21 years of age? Do you think people are aware of that?
That could probably come up if we did some formal education thing later. I think what Sarah's saying is we're just trying to get this as a quick, make it as short and sweet as possible, just to get some input back from the locals or from the people that live in town. And
Well,
Yeah,
the
and-
reason I even mention it is because some people may be thinking, with so many schools in town, that the students will be coming in to this store. If there is a store, I mean,
Well, I think we want to think more than just a store too, and I think in this survey, it would be generally helpful if we ask, what is your age? So that we get an age range for the people who are answering the survey, so we understand.
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, you don't have to reject them up front, but if you ask for their age and they say, well, I'm 13, then right.
Then we can say, that's
Right.
great, you can't go in the store.
Right.
yeah. So the highlighted number 16, do we want to collect demographic details?
I think that's a yes then to that one.
I think that's a yes, yeah.
The age group, definitely.
But Ty, that's just a question for the town. Are there any restrictions on us asking details like that? It's an opt-in question, so you're just offering what we're asking. We won't make it mandatory.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's demographics is always a part of the survey. Try to get an
I think you
idea.
ought to leave race out of it.
Yeah. I mean, well, you have race and ethnicity, so
I mean,
you
that
can leave race out and just leave ethnicity.
yeah, that has nothing to do with anything.
No,
I'll just put ethnicity.
I don't know if sex does either, but
Right. I think age is important.
Okay,
the
we can
age
just,
is definitely important.
if you want to just use the one demographic, that's fine. We can just use age. That's one less, all the less questions I have to answer.
that's funny though, because I've been asking a lot of people from all over the place, what their thoughts on the whole subject are. And actually, it was one of my sisters who said to me that she thinks it is oh, how did she say it? That it affects the male. She would feel that it would affect the male population more than women.
Well, I think on this, we have to
That
be
it
very driven by the
negatively
science.
impacts the young male population.
Yeah, we have to be very driven by the science on this. There is some indication that yes, it does affect the male developing brain more so than the female brain. And the current science on this would indicate that heavy amounts of THC in anyone under the age of 25 can have detrimental effects, including some levels of psychosis.
Right. It's the assassin of youth. We all knew that.
Yeah, and you know, all things in moderation, I think is another point here that when it comes to any kind of controlled substance in across the board. And that's, you know, what we're dealing with here is a psychoactive substance. CBD too, you know, there is some indication that in high doses, it metabolizes in the liver. So at high doses, it can be toxic. It has liver toxicity. There are some reproductive issues that have been discovered with cannabis and CBD.
Sure.
And it, again, it has to do with how much you're using, whether you're taking it with something, whether you're taking CBD and THC together. So I think the long term, the broader question here is that we don't have a lot of medical details about it because it's been a controlled substance for so long. So there's limited science on this at this stage. But as if there is a descheduling to a Schedule 3 drug, that will open up cannabis to the more of the universities and more of the academic areas to study it, and then we'll have a lot more information about it. And there are also parts of it that are very good too. So there are indications that the use of cannabis can be very helpful for, I think there's 3 areas that they know of so far. CBD for sure does help with seizures because in high levels it is an FDA approved drug. So there's a drug called Epidiolex, which does help control seizures, and it's a high level extraction of CBD. And then it does help with cannabis does help with some neurodegenerative diseases, with cancer, particularly when you're on chemotherapy, with your ability to eat again. And then for eating disorders, particularly anorexia nervosa, it's been shown to help increase appetite and not necessarily increase um, this the psychology around, and then that's the wrong term, but it can help people through the process of recovery. So and that's also true of psilocybin and a couple of the other psychoactive components because of the way it fires in the brain.
Wow.
But yeah, too much information for everybody here, but that's where the science stands on it right now.
Right, right. So I think with this, you know, we'd be ready to go to the full commission and make at least those recommendations as to the survey and the fact that we formed the committee um, and also deliver the same information to them that you gave to us.
Yeah, I'd advise the full commission to read some of the information beforehand just to be up to date on it. And I do want to also point for the record that Anne was correct. The legal age is 21 here, and I think I said 18 earlier, but 21 is correct.
Did I miss anything at the beginning of the meeting? I got out of work late. I'm sorry.
So, Ann, I don't think so.
So I just had a question on that cannabis policy impacts public health and health equity. That's a pretty lengthy document. Are there any highlights in there? I mean, there is a section called highlights, but is there anything in particular that would be appropriate for us to review out of that?
I would it's sort of an individual takeaway. I would suggest reading the executive summary on it, and that'll give you kind of the high level on it. And it is, if you want to dig into any section in particular, it's good to go through. I haven't read it in full context yet, so I don't want to answer the question specifically for you.
Right.
But the executive summary, at least for me, gave me a pretty good concise overview.
Great, thanks.
All right, so Sarah, what do you think? You think
I think that's probably, if we leave it here, Ty, maybe look a little bit more as we get closer to the commission meeting next week into the distribution on that, and then I think an easy way to get it around town is put it in SurveyMonkey, give everybody a QR code, and go from there, and we can put it on the town newsletter. We can make the QR codes available in stores around town. People can scan and just take the survey from there.
Yeah.
That'll keep it pretty easy.
Sounds good. One of the things I just wanted to know about the engagement phase, I just wanted to just note a little bit of caution about, you know, teaming up with any particular store or anybody in particular. You don't want it to make it seem like you have some kind of predetermination
Yeah.
one way or the other.
I do think we do want to walk into a couple of stores here in town, just make sure that they're aware that the survey is going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you just noted having an event at one particular store.
You nix that out of
And
that, yeah.
yeah, I don't know that that would be the best. It may be somebody else, like the chamber might want to have an event or something, but for the commission themselves might not.
Yeah, and I think maybe highlight maybe if we get to the stage where people feel like they do need more education, that we do that through the town and through the library probably would be the two most appropriate venues.
Absolutely, and we can make those arrangements.
That was sort of where I left off with the thinking on this. So if we're good, then we can move to the full commission and adjourn.
Sarah, great job. Super job. This is good
Yeah,
stuff.
very well done. Very well put together.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
And like I promised, we'd make them fairly efficient meetings.
All right, terrific. All right, so I guess with that, Ty's got what you need. We could close the meeting. Which would be the adjournment section.
I make a motion. We adjourn the meeting.
Second,
Yep. Okay, all in favor? So we'll see you guys Thursday.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right,
Have a
thanks
good
so
day.
much.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
bye.